Hi, I'm Dana, and for today's video I thought we'd talk about the top 4 moments that I knew that I was not going to be staying in contact with my mother for forever. You know, there were the moments where I was like, this relationship is going to have an expiration date, like I can't keep up at this forever, you know? And I'd usually get straight into it, but I feel the need to leave a little disclaimer because I am posting more content about like familial abuse, and as such I'm having some of my regular viewers sort of tell me to get over it in a nice way, be like, stop dwelling on it, no need to cry over spilled milk. And I would appreciate if you could try to understand a little bit that this is really very similar to my autism stuff, like in the place that it's coming from. I understand it's a different topic, but it's the thing of like, I spent my entire life being like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I function like a normal person? Why can't I do all of these things? And then I found out it was because I was autistic, and I gave it a little bit of time to process, and I started making content because I was like, then the other people that are also like, what the fuck is wrong with me, will find out that it's not that there's something horribly wrong with them, it's just that they're autistic. And in a similar way, I spent my entire life wondering, why am I such a fucking drama queen? Why am I such a spoiled little bitch? Why am I so horrible all the time? Why am I so manipulative? Why am I all these like terrible personality traits? And then I had these little moments where I was like, I'm not this horrible, terrible person. It's that my family are actually quite shitty to me and quite abusive and not very nice. And I now have all of these things to work through and to unpack and deal with to get past that. And like, I went no contact with them in 2022, so I've had a few years to process it, and I feel like I'm doing very well in healing because I frankly wouldn't have been able to make this content earlier without crying and being miserable and being really upset about it. So it's not that I'm dwelling on it, it's not that I'm crying over spilt milk, it's not that it's like constantly on my mind and I'm like living in the past. It's that I've done that bit and I'm somewhat healed from it, like definitely not entirely. I'm definitely not like the picture of mental health and like wellness around family abuse or whatever, but I've done a good amount of it to where I can talk about it in a way that I think is going to help other people. That is the aim, that is the goal. Please try to understand that, because some of the comments, like as much as I really do appreciate that you've phrased it nicely and you're trying to be kind, you also are clearly missing the context of why I'm making this content, and that is kind of important to me. So like, that's my little disclaimer out the way. I'm sorry it was long, and we're gonna get right into it now. Should I do it in... I'll do it in chronological order. I haven't written them in chronological order. Okay, so the first one is one that I'm not sure I have properly shared in a video before, because I did my whole like, this happened during the most abusive situation in my life and it was really fucking horrible. So I made an entire video about it that I haven't even edited, not posted anywhere. Don't know if I'm going to. I think I might refilm it in a way that I think is more conductive to actually being useful. But okay, so we were living in a B&B in Mill. Lots of other things had happened. I would have been 13 years old. I was going into the winter to, like, it was Christmas and then I was going back to school and I was going into year 9. So I was however the fuck old you are when that happens. And the woman that owned the B&B that we were staying at for free, because we would have otherwise been homeless in the UK, decided that I needed to go to the same school as her grandsons, and it was a Catholic school, and that meant that I needed to go to church and make a good impression with the priest, and he would put in a good word for me at the school, and it would be this whole lovely thing of me getting to go to Catholic school. And I didn't fucking want to. I was maybe like 8 or 9 when I had a friend that left my school to go to Catholic school. She fucking hated it. Her mum absolutely hated it. Her mum was friends with my mum. We had like multiple times that my mum was like, I'd never put my kids in a Catholic school, that sounds awful, that sounds horrible. So when she was like, you're gonna go to Catholic school, I was like, what the fuck are you on, love? Like, you've raised me as an atheist. You've tried really hard to give me the message that people that believe in any sort of God are absolute fools and idiots and like they're ridiculous, which like I had to unpack myself and be like, hey, look at that, not every religious person is like just the stupidest person on the planet. But that was how I was raised, and all of a sudden you're gonna put me into a school where I have to attend fucking mass and communion and Ash fucking Wednesdays and all this shit. Like, I don't think so. So she wakes me up early one Sunday and she's like, you're going to church, and I'm like, no I'm not. Like, there was, like I said, there was a variety of other like really bad abuse happening during this time. Like I said, it was by far the most abusive part of my life. It was the part where like things that everyone considers to be abuse was happening. Like, I wasn't being fucking fed, you know? So there was so much already going on, and I was like, I am absolutely not getting out of this bed at 7 a.m. while it's absolutely fucking freezing to go to a church that I'm going to feel really anxious and out of place at, to listen to some shit that you've specifically raised me to not believe in. Like, no. So my mum just pulled the duvet off me, pulled my clothes off me, started physically like dressing me while I was just laying limp in bed refusing to move, sat me up on the edge of the bed, gave me a load of verbal abuse about how fat I was, about my weight, about how she should be able to move me, she should be able to do this, but I'm just so fat and too big and too this and too that. It was horrible. So I realised at this point that, like, you know, she'd just fucking undressed and dressed me and was brushing my hair, and like, I was going to church and I was like, no, I'm fucking not. So like, she was distracted by something or another, and I fled. I ran out of the room that we'd been given, and I went and locked myself in the bathroom that was down the hall, and obviously she fucking ran after me. And that's the thing, is this is still hard for me to talk about, and I still feel weird talking about it because it feels so over dramatic to talk about. It feels like, you know, because this is one of the things that I brought up to my mum repeatedly as an adult, being like, I need to understand what the fuck was going on here, so like be able to forgive you for it, to be able to move past it. Like, I need to know what the fuck was going on. And my mum was just like, that didn't happen, don't be silly, it wasn't like that at all. And like, yes it was. So I'd ran and locked myself in this bathroom where my mum and my middle brother proceeded to rip the door off the hinges to get me out. It was a small bathroom, like it was literally just the toilet and then like the actual bathroom next door. So I had my arms and my legs like pressed to the walls trying to like keep myself in this room while my brother was trying to pull me out. And then my mum went, oh fuck this, pushed him out the way, grabbed me by my hair and took me down the stairs by my hair. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, why the fuck would you do that? And I had a lot of moments throughout my childhood that I would be having like full-on meltdowns alone in my room over things, and my main thought would be, I would never do this to my kids, and like, I do not intend to have kids anymore. But that was like a big thing for me. It was one of those things where like, I would just never do this. This is not an appropriate thing to do. And even as like a really young child, I would like consistently think to myself while having these like massive meltdowns, the only thought in my mind would be like, I would never fucking do this to someone. I would never fucking do this to someone. Like, what the fuck? So that was what was happening in my head as she pulled me down the stairs by my hair. And I guess my middle brother must have followed us down or gone down beforehand. I don't really know. He was there and then he wasn't, kind of thing. And then him and my oldest brother were both stood outside the front door. And I tried really hard to make a fucking run for it, but I weren't very fast, and they were both like 6'1", 6'2", and really skinny and really quick, so like I didn't have a fucking chance. And they grabbed me by either arm and they like fucking marched me to church and like put the doors open, and it had already started. Like, this took a while, so everyone in the church turned around to look at them, like physically like linked through either arm, like grabbing onto me, marched me in while I was still trying to like not be there. And we sat down, and by that point I was so fucking anxious and everyone's looking at us and shit, so I just sat there and took it and dealt with it. And then my mum came when it finished, and she like spoke to the priest and had a little chat and introduced me to him and tried to make me look good to him. And like, she just acted as though that morning had never ever happened. Like, from like an hour afterwards, you know, like the next time I saw her, like an hour later, she just acted like it hadn't happened. And I went through the whole day and I was like so on edge, and I kept just looking at him and being like, what the fuck? What the fuck was that? What the shit was that? And like, we were sharing a bed because we'd only been given one room with a double bed. I remember like just laying as far away from us as I could and being like, I can't do this. Like, you're not, who the fuck are you? Like, I can't associate with you. Like, I don't know who the fuck you are. Like, you know, like I definitely put my mum up on a pedestal because like that's what my family did. Everyone acted like she was like the most matriarchal, perfect mother that you could ever wish to have, and that's what she was to a lot of my friends and the like as well. But like, that was the moment in my childhood where I was just like, oh, you're not who I built you up to be, you're not who I thought you were, and I don't know who the fuck you are, and I don't like you, and I wouldn't choose to be around you. And like, it was the first time that she'd done something where I was like, you don't do that. Like, you really don't do that. Like, the other times you've been mean, you've been a bit cruel, you've been a bit like harsh, whatever else, like, that's fucked, you know? So that was really the first moment where I was like, this is just some woman. Like, this is, like, I know she's my mum, but also she is just some woman, and like, this ain't gonna last, you know? The second time came ages fucking later. So that would have been 2011, I think. And then in 2019, I had my autism assessment, and oh, it was bizarre. So I had to take my mum to my autism assessment. That was the way that it like worked in my area, was that you take a parent, you take someone who's known you for your entire life. And the vast majority of the assessment was focused on asking her things about my like developmental years and when I was like very, very young, like way before I remember. And that is also part of why it pisses me off when people imply that like my diagnosis is something that I managed to like fake and weasel and manipulate my way to, because I really didn't get to speak all that much in my assessment. The vast majority of it was my mum talking about like what I was like before the age of like 4 or 5. So my mum was talking about me as like a literal toddler, like before I really like had a conscious fucking thought, you know, like when I was just existing and learning things as a little baby. And to this day, I'm so glad that I had the assessor that I had, because he saw exactly what was going on. So he was asking her about specific things, and he'd be like, okay, so the way that you're explaining that's an autistic trait. And my mum would be like, no, that's Dana being difficult. And he'd be like, it can be difficult to handle as a parent, but it is very much an autistic trait. And that's one of the very clear signs that Dana has always been autistic, you know? So he was asking like quite specific questions about the ways that I reacted to things and the ways that I behaved and the ways that I was as like a very young child. And she was explaining to him how I was just the most stubborn, resilient, horrible little child. Like nothing she did was ever good enough for me. I would just cry and I would just be having a bad time. I was just constantly having temper tantrums over the slightest thing. Asked me to put a pair of shoes on, I'm having a temper tantrum. You know, like she made me sound like I was just a bitch, like an absolute bitch at the age of like 3, because I didn't want to wear headbands that she put me in. And especially when she was explaining that when I started school, her tactic for it, because I would have a meltdown every single day, was to just get me to school, put me in the playground and fucking leave me there. And he was like, so Dana had meltdowns every day before school and you just left it for someone else to deal with? And she was like, well, it wasn't a meltdown, it was Dana being difficult. But yeah, she repeatedly explained how I was, it wasn't that I was autistic. Like she consistently compared how difficult I was to raise to my autistic brother, but it's not that I was also autistic, it's just that I was a girl. Girls are just horrible. Girls are just really difficult to raise, and they're just bitches from the moment they're born, obviously. So even though there were all these times that she would like specifically compare my behaviour to my diagnosed as a child autistic brother, she just didn't really care, because it was clearly just that I was a bitch and nothing behind it. She also had a lot of things that she thought that I was just copying my brother, and it was things where like even my assessor was like, he's 9 years older than her, you're telling us that this thing that he did as like a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, how does Dana know to copy that? And she was like, yeah. So it felt like being an episode of The Twilight Zone or something. Like I felt like I was again seeing like a completely different side of my mother, and just sitting there being like, this woman never liked me. Like, and that was something I heard throughout my childhood, was like, I love you, but I don't have to like you. And that was very fucking true. She loved me because I was a kid. She did not fucking like anything about me. And the thing in my autism assessment that was really the moment of like, I'm done, this isn't gonna last forever, was when she was like, oh, well, we did have like several people that suggested Dana would be autistic throughout her childhood, but we didn't think so. And he was like, oh, like who? And she was like, you know, teachers. And then I went to young carers groups because of my brother being autistic. So they were groups where like if you had a disabled family member, it was like a reprieve, where you'd get to go and do something fun. And I remember having one of the staff members that like really focused on me, and like I remember her taking me out for McDonald's and just like asking me about how I was and what my life was like and what my parents were like, and like the first person that ever like really listened to me, you know. And it turned out that she'd been like probing to find out if I was autistic or not, and heavily thought that I was. And my parents were just like, no, go away. I'd also had speech therapists, like 2 different speech therapists as a child, because I'd had one-to-one and then moved on to group ones where I just refused to interact with the groups, which again, he was like, well, that's a major fucking autistic trait, isn't it? But like, both speech therapists had suggested that I was very likely autistic, and that was why I needed to be there, and I had other things going on. And my parents were like, teach her how to fucking talk. Like, we don't want to have to keep bringing her to this. This is major, like, a whole hour out of our day every other week. Like, just teach her how to fucking talk, you know? But finding out that I'd spent my entire life feeling so out of place and like there was something deeply wrong with me and something that made me like deeply not normal and not like everyone else, and I'd had to do all of this research on my own and figure it out on my own and go to the doctors on my own and be like, hi, I want an autism diagnosis, and wait for the assessment and do literally everything apart from the assessment entirely on my own, only to find out during it that she had multiple chances to do that for me while I was still a child, and I would have known through my fucking teen years what was going on, and she just couldn't be fucked, quite frankly. You know, it's one of those things where like she never like that's the really frustrating thing with my mum, and when I was trying to like unpack things with her, was that every time I asked about the same things I'd get a different fucking answer. Sometimes it was that I was a girl, so she just knew that I wouldn't be autistic. Sometimes it was my dad that decided I wasn't. Sometimes it was that she tried but they just didn't take it any further. I got a different story every fucking time. But considering that she worked with disabled children and multiple people pointed it out and everything, she could have saved me decades of fucking trauma and trying to figure myself out and wondering what was going on, and she just decided not to. And it's things like that where people are always like, oh, she had so much going on, like your brother, and she went to work and she did that. I don't care, you're supposed to look after your kids. Like, I'm sorry, you're supposed to look after your kids. If people are repeatedly telling you, hey, we think that your kid has this diagnosable issue that they would be able to get support for, and you just decide to do nothing for it, while also supporting your older autistic son, I don't see any excuses for that. I don't care, you know? And I think that was a moment of like really big disconnect, because like up until that point I definitely realised like my mum isn't my biggest fan. My mum doesn't do everything that a mother is supposed to do. She doesn't exactly treat me the way that my friends' mums treat them, but she's still my mum, you know? I'm still gonna like love her and shit. But that was the moment where I was like, she doesn't care. Like, she don't care. You know, and she, like, it's not something that's like come on as I've gotten older and I'm an adult and I'm more independent. Like, she didn't particularly care when I was a kid either, because that brought up all the times that I would like repeatedly went to the doctors because I had like constant aches and pains, and for the longest time we were told it was growing pains, and then I was told that it was because I was fat. So she never bothered to like actually push anything, you know. And I'm sorry, like, sure, I was overweight as an 8-year-old, not to the point where I should have been like refusing to do PE because of how badly my knees and hips hurt. Like, come on. So it was realising that there was basically like a bunch of medical neglect and being like, you never did that. Like, that's one of your like main responsibilities as a parent, is to make sure your child is healthy, and you didn't do that. And especially going home after my autism diagnosis, because they told us like that then and there and gave me some level of paperwork that like, you are autistic, that's that. You are diagnosed now. And we went home and it was her that told my brothers, oh, Dana's autistic now. And that was that. I expected some level of difference, because we still treated my older brother differently because he's autistic. He needs to be accommodated to, he needs to be supported. So I did think that things might change a little bit, and they just didn't. And that was the first time that I really considered like, do I want to continue talking to this woman? Because like, she really is just some woman at that point, you know? And like, she isn't, like, even now, like, that's my mother, and I'd rather it wasn't. I'd rather have a different mother, but that is my mother. But also, she didn't fucking behave like one, you know? This is one that I think people are gonna unfortunately relate to even more so more recently, because one of the big dividing factors for us was the Brexit vote. I feel like I need to do another disclaimer of like, I fucking love democracy. I fucking love a good vote. I think that votes should be followed. No, I didn't like the fucking outcome of the Brexit vote, but I respect that that's what it was. During the run up to it, okay, so context for anyone who's new, my family were racist as fuck. They were fucking horrible about anyone that's like not English, like not even like, I know a lot of people just do like the brown people, but my family were the type of like, someone had cut off my brother in the Asda supermarket once, and he went, oh, they're fucking Polish. And I was like, how do you know he's Polish? And he went, oh, I saw his nose. Like, insanely racist, to a point where like I was just consistently baffled by things that they said. Like, I had a whole bunch of stuff to unpack myself as I got older, and it was made much easier because of how just insane the shit they said was, you know, and there was no chance I was getting pulled into that. So when it came to the Brexit vote, my brother heavily manipulated my mum's opinion. Like, we had months where we'd be sat in the garden, because he wanted to manipulate my opinion as well. My brother wanted to like be in charge of the family kind of thing, so he would try really hard to manipulate my opinion, and he would tell me these like just completely, you all remember the fucking insane lies that were going around during Brexit, and he'd tell them to us like they were fact, and I'd be like, where's your source? Show me Nigel Farage saying that. Show me fucking whoever it is that said that. Show me them saying it. Show me your source. And he'd be like, oh, it's right here on like brexitlovers.org.co.uk. Like some like absolute bollock fucking, like some of them straight up had WordPress in the fucking URL, you know? Like it's just some guy typing a blog. Like it was just absolute bollocks. And I'd tell my mum, like, you know that's not true, right? Like I don't care, like I do, but like I don't actually want to have a say in who you vote for. Like I'm talking to you like I spoke to my mum. I don't actually give a shit who you vote for. I want you to be voting knowing the truth of what you're voting for, you know? Like if you want to vote Brexit because of this and that, go for it. If those are actual things that will come around, and like I know that there was like, I know Brexit was a fucking mess, alright, but I was very much like reading up everything that I could from trusted sources and trying to relay them to her, and she would just be like, but your brother said, and it is so fucking, like, I've talked about this a few times recently with friends, but it's so difficult to, like, it's so easy to convince someone that something is a fact, and it is so difficult to convince someone that the fact they've become convinced of isn't actually a fact, you know? So it became this really big thing where I was very consistently trying to like really like devil's advocate and give positives and negatives of both sides in the hopes that my mum would just make an informed decision. You know, whatever that decision might fucking be, I just wanted it to be something that was informed by actual facts. So we come to the day, my brother decides that he's not voting after all, and I was like, okay. But I was going to vote, and my mum was like, oh, well, if you're going anywhere, I'll come with you and give you a lift. So we get in the car and we pull up into the, like, is it a polling station? So we pull in and she turns off the car and she looks over at me and she goes, I know you don't want me to, but I am going to vote for it. And I was like, it's not about what I want. I just want you to make an informed vote. Like, I just want you to vote knowing the truth of what you're voting for. People who knew my family knew that these were their opinions. And I didn't want people to think that I thought like that. I didn't want people to think that I was okay with people thinking like that. I was so sick of having political debates with my family almost every day. Like every time I saw them, it felt like, and that's the thing, is like, I don't think I'd have minded so much if it was a political debate and not my brother spewing absolute just bullshit, like things that just were not true, and my mum being like, yeah, I hate people I don't even know, people that I have no reason to even like really think about. I hate them and I want them to suffer. Like that is the view that they had, and I couldn't stand it. I absolutely fucking hated it, you know? It made me look at my family and be like, you're horrible people. Like you're deeply, truly horrible people that don't care if other people are suffering. Like I can't get behind that. I can't support that. I can't pretend I'm okay with people that have that point of view. I can't do it. Like, it's fucked. This last one I'm going to try to get through a little bit faster because it's one of the few ones that still really upsets me. Because it was, I think this was like only a few months before I went no contact with him. It was amongst like, it was the last, to be completely honest with you, it was the first and last really nice day that I had with my mum. So my mum had spent ages complaining that she wasn't in any of like any recent photographs. We've talked before about how my family had like family photographs from before I was born, but there hadn't been any since that. So when photographs were happening, it was my mum taking the pictures, and she'd complained quite consistently, and I think very fucking fairly, that she didn't really have any recent pictures of herself. And like I don't defend my mum often because I quite frankly don't think that there's that many areas to defend her with, but on that I absolutely agree with it. I think that so many women are like disregarded and dismissed and not represented within families and all that kind of thing, because they're the person doing the labour of taking the pictures and making the documentation and things like that. And I absolutely think it was right and fair of her to be upset about that. So for Christmas, I went on Argos and I found one of those like packages that they do where you can go and get like your hair and makeup done, and they'll give you a little glass of bubbly, and then you get your pictures taken. And I think it was, they included like 3 digital prints and 2 physical ones. Like it's cheap, so you're not getting like every picture they fucking take, and that's where at the end they show you all the pictures and you can decide to buy them if you want to for quite a lot of money. So it's one of those things where like there's a level to which it's a scam, but also you get this lovely little day out and you do get a couple of pictures. So I was like, I'm fine with that, and my mum will enjoy it. We'll have a few nice pictures of the 2 of us together, because one of the things she specifically said was that there were like no pictures of us together because I hated having my picture taken because of how fucking awful she made me feel about my weight and the way I looked. But okay, like I'd recently lost weight, so she actually acted like I was pretty for a change, to be fair. So see, that's the thing that upsets me about it so much, is that it was by far the nicest day I have ever had with my mum. And it was because I entirely engineered every moment of it to be. I knew that that was exactly what she wanted to do. I knew she'd love the experience of people like doting on us and doing our makeup and doing our hair and like making us look all nice. All of the outfits that I picked for myself were clothes that she'd either specifically told me that she liked on me, or things that she'd specifically bought for me, so I knew she'd like the things that I was wearing in the pictures. I let her tell them like how to do my hair and my makeup so that I would look the way that she wanted me to. When we had finished, I took her to the Casbah on Bowl Street because we'd been there a few times when we first moved to Liverpool. We hadn't eaten out together in like years at this point, beyond like getting chippy every now and again. So it was like this really big thing that like she also, to be fair, did pay like, I want to say like £200 to get all the pictures of us. And then I'd taken her out for this meal and I paid for that, and she was like, oh really, no one ever pays for me? And like it was really lovely. And then we went into St. John's, and like it was by far the nicest day that I ever had with my mum, by far. And like I say, it's because and it was entirely because I engineered it to be and made sure that it would be. And I planned and scheduled and did everything I could to make her like me that day, and she adored me for it. And then we'd gone into St. John's, and I think we'd done this on like a Friday or a Saturday, and it was extremely busy. Like it had been fairly busy on Bowl Street, but we'd been sat outside, so it wasn't so loud and it just wasn't so, you know, all that much. Like it wasn't so bad. And then going into St. John's, I think we'd maybe gone into one shop, maybe we hadn't even done that, and my mum had a panic attack. Like she started panicking, she was shaking, her breathing was quick, she was like looking everywhere. I could just, you know how it is, like when you're someone who has panic attacks and has severe anxiety, you just look at people sometimes and you're like, oh, you're doing that. So I took her into a corner and I like stood so that like all she could see was me, and I was like, are you okay? And she was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I was like, okay, so what I think's wrong right now is that you're a little bit overwhelmed and you're a little bit panicked because it's really busy and it's really loud and there's a lot going on in here. Does that sound right? And she was like, yeah, I think that's what it is. And I was like, okay, so when this happens, you need to breathe. We're gonna breathe for a second, just in this corner. It's just you and me. No one's looking at us. No one knows we're here. Just you and me. We're just gonna breathe for a minute, okay? And she was like, okay. So we breathed for a minute, and I was like, are you ready to go? Because we do need to, if we leave this area, you are going to feel better. I promise you. And she was like, I don't want to walk through everyone. And I was like, I know you don't, but to get out, we need to walk through everyone, okay? So if I put my arm around your shoulders like this, and I will be the person that touches the other people, I will be the barrier towards you in the world, and we can walk through the people together and you won't even have to look at them. You can keep looking at me, okay? And she was like, yeah, okay. And by this point, like, she was crying. It was a panic attack, you know? So I walked her out, I got her outside, I sat her down, I rolled her a ciggy because she was a smoker, and I was like, are you feeling better now? And she was like, my mouth's so dry. And I was like, other than that, are you feeling better now? And she was like, other than that, yeah. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go into the Audi here. You're gonna be able to see me the whole time. It's got a glass front, the drinks are at the front there, you can see the drinks. I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna go to the till and pay for it. I'll be back with a drink for you, okay? And she was like, yeah, all right. So I went and did that, got her a drink. We sat, like, I think we chain smoked like 5 or 6 ciggies while she calmed down. And then she was all right, like the panic attack was over, she'd recovered, and she was like, that's never happened to me before, what the fuck was that? And I was like, it's a panic attack. And she was like, why have I had that? And I was like, they happen sometimes, you know, that they happen. And she was like, okay, I really want to go home now. And we got in the car and we were just like, we were in silence. She hadn't turned the radio on and she wasn't talking, so we just sat there in silence. And I had this like crushing realization of, I've just like really kindly, like gentle parented my mum through a panic attack in the way that I think everybody deserves to be fucking guided and taken for a panic attack, because they're horrible to have. And this is someone who has dozens upon dozens of times seen me having panic attacks, looked me dead in the fucking eyes and told me, stop being so fucking stupid. Why are you acting like this? What the fuck do you think you're doing? There's not even anything to panic about. Why are you being stupid? Why are you being silly? Why are you being like this? No one else is doing this. Everyone's fucking staring at us now because you're being stupid. Oh, now you gotta turn on the waterworks. God, just because you don't want to do something. Like, every panic attack I ever had in front of my mother, I was absolutely fucking berated for. I was made to feel like the biggest bit of shit. I was made to feel like I was faking every emotion that I'd ever fucking had. I was made to feel so fucking bad for feeling any sort of panic or anxiety. And that's the reaction she got out of me when it happens to her. Like, that was one of the biggest moments that I was like, I'm not gonna continue talking to this woman. She's not gonna continue being in my life, because that wasn't hard. You know? It wasn't hard to look at someone in a difficult position, to look at someone in a distressed situation and feel empathy for them and try to help them. It wasn't difficult. It wasn't hard. And it helped her. She appreciated that. And she couldn't even look at a fucking 8-year-old that was going through that and feel the empathy to try to help. Like, nah. And it's one of the moments that ran through my head so many times after I did stop talking to her, because I hated seeing my mum show fucking emotion, man. I hated remembering that my mum actually, like, felt sadness and felt this and felt that, because it's like, so you do understand. Like, you do know how it is to feel these things, and you just don't care to think about it when I'm feeling them. You just don't care when I feel a certain way. Like, you know, I don't want to be like, I have, like, the most empathy in the world, but if I'm seeing someone go through something, I feel it with them to a point, you know? Like, I feel for them immensely. And she never fucking did for me. See how I saved that one till last because it's the most depressing. But yeah, it's also in regards to, like, the start disclaimer. It's one of those things where, like, it's all very well saying, like, no point crying over spilt milk, don't dwell in the past. There's always going to be a level of me that is upset about my mum not fucking liking me, and that's okay. The degree to which people seem to think that I should just get over it is insane. Like, most people don't get over their parents dying, okay? Like, most people, like, however you want to deal with grief is up to you. I don't want to judge anyone, but most people that I've known that have dealt with a parent dying have kept pictures of them around, and they've, like, maintained them as a part of their life, you know, the whole, like, if you talk about them, it keeps the memory alive. So I think it's real fucking strange that I'm supposed to just sit down and shut up and stop talking about it and get over it. But also, the vast majority of comments have been very kind and very supportive, and I've really appreciated them. It's always just, like, the couple of negative ones that, like, stick, you know, or the ones that aren't even negative but are just annoying. But the vast majority, especially from my regulars, are always really lovely and really supportive, and I do really appreciate anyone commenting anything, to be honest with you. Like, I'm pretty sure it helps me in the algorithm and stuff. So if people want to comment anything at all, I don't really mind. But I also think that, like, people should try to show empathy and kindness towards each other, and sometimes you can just not comment, you know? But yeah, so that's today's video. That's all I have to say. You can follow me, you can subscribe. I'm posting a lot over on TikTok at the minute, and, like, kind of doing reasonably well over there if you want to follow me there. But I have done it again. I have left myself, like, 2 hours to edit and upload this video, so I'm gonna go and do that now. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you have a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year, and I will see you again in a couple of days.